Hi, this is Dave with the weekly market recap, closing out the week for Friday, August the 24th, 2012. I'm recording this video on Saturday, August the 25th. For those that are part of our meetup, we have a meetup tomorrow, Sunday, August the 26th. It should be a good one. It's going to continue the technical analysis series and focus on market modes, phases, and different aspects of the markets. It'll be really interesting, and it is session 2 of part 5. Look forward to seeing you all there. So let's start out the video as we usually do with the Dow futures on the daily chart. So the big news in the stock indices this week is that we put in a new intermediate high. We finally broke above these highs. We had the retest and we broke above the highs that we've been talking about in the last several videos. The highs that were put back at the end of March into the April area and into the end of April, May. So these highs back in here. So the big news was that we did put in a new high, but then, as is typical with stock indices, once we put in the high, we had a nice little pullback. So the pullback was actually not as deep as I thought it would be. I was expecting the market to pull back a little bit further than it did. This was definitely an acceptable and expected pullback back down to the 21 exponential moving average here, and this trend line here that we've identified going back for quite a while. But I was actually expecting or hoping for a flush down into this level here at 12,800. This was a pretty key level that we spent a lot of time at. As you can see here in and around these levels, there's a lot of congestion in there. There's probably a lot of market liquidity in those areas. I was expecting potentially a flush down to these levels at 12,800, and it'll become a little bit more apparent why on the weekly chart. And I was looking for a potential swing long trade at those levels. Now, it's still possible that that could happen. That's just where I was interested in the market. But in terms of what the market is doing, it is following, a decent market structure uptrend of higher highs. Okay, higher highs, higher lows, higher highs, higher lows, and it finally, got out of this area, retested the highs, and then pulled back. So it is now at support. But what I'd like to see, I really like this level in order to get on board this move a little bit better. Now, did we get the pullback that we probably should have been expecting? Yeah, we definitely got that pullback, and that would have been a decent area for me to look at potentially taking a long position. I didn't get on there. I was actually I was hoping to get on down here. So just a reminder, this is not trading advice. This is market commentary, and this is just something that I'm looking at and sharing with the group and the viewers of this video. So I'm definitely interested at this level in seeing if we can get down there. If we can't and we break back above this level, set to put in a new swing high, then I missed the pullback, and it's not a big deal. So let's move on to the other markets and see where we're at with the NASDAQ and the S&P futures. So the S&P future is much the same story. We broke above these highs. We broke above these highs that were put in around 1412-ish. And we pulled back to trendline support and 21 exponential moving average support, and we're bouncing off of those levels. So that looks very much the same as the Dow futures. Let's take a quick look at the NASDAQ futures and Q and TradeStation. And if we look, basically we had pretty much the same situation. I mean, we slightly broke above these highs that were around 2783. Yep, 2783 in the NASDAQ futures. Everything looks good higher, except we only really pulled back to the 8-period exponential moving average here. So the question is, are we going to get a deeper pullback in the NASDAQ? At this point in time, not sure. We still really need to get through those highs. We put in a new intermediate high, but we need to get through those highs. So it would make sense to pull, have a decent pullback down to the 21 period exponential moving average in the NASDAQ. The 8 period might hold. It's quite possible. But the important thing to note this week is we did put in new highs. We are pulling back. So the question is, will the uptrend hold, or are we going to pull back a little bit lower? I'd like to take a look at this market now from the Darvish squeeze perspective. From the Darvish squeeze perspective, you can see here we had a long signal on the Dow on the weekly chart right in and around these levels at the break of this Darvish box while we were in a squeeze. So we have this Darvish squeeze taking place here. Everything looks good to the high side. The Hakinashis are blue. Squeeze momentum's long. The MACD is positive, and my trending indicator is positive. So let's take a look at why I was looking at the 12,800 level specifically. I'm going to expand out this weekly chart. And if we look at the weekly chart, what you can see is this is an automatic signal that forms on my chart based on some software that I've written, this Darvish squeeze setup that I've written and that I've kind of been working on for a couple of years here. So you can see here the signal fired automatically printed on the chart when the price action broke above this Darvish box while we were fresh into a new weekly squeeze. So this is a weekly chart. Now these weekly charts are a big deal. They are multi-week moves, and they're where I expect the bigger pressures to be. So this is where the bigger kind of market forces are acting, and these are the bigger market trends. So you can see here, you've kind of got this uptrend here. I'll just draw a proper trend line on here, if I may. Okay, so you've got sort of this trend line, depending on where you take the trend line from, from this body or these tails, you've kind of got this trend line here. I'm going to draw it from the tails. Now, this is why I'm interested in the 12,800 level personally. I'm personally interested in the 12,800 level because you have a pullback then down to this trend line, down to it's actually a confluence area of this trend line, this level about 12,800, and this 21 period exponential moving average. So in order to get a pullback like this, would not violate this uptrend on the weekly chart, but would actually be weekly support. And I think that would be sort of the safe entry because it either works or it doesn't work at this level. So having a nice little pullback all the way down to this level would have gotten me excited in a swing long position in the Dow futures. Now, what we did end up doing, was, I apologize, I had to pause the video there for a second. So what we did end up doing was having a pullback to the 8 period exponential moving average on the weekly chart, which came in around close to 13,000, not exactly, but about 13,000. 13,000 is a nice round number, and we did find support at that nice round number there. So, and then we bounced off of that level, and we're kind of sort of doji on the week, a little bit of indecision up in these levels. So at this point in time, I like this level still because of the weekly support and the confluence of these. I've been watching this key support level, 12,800, for quite a while, and all of these things are kind of coming together in and around that level, and it just looks like a magnet to me. So if we pull down to that level, down to that trend line, into this confluence area, I'm definitely interested in exploring a long position. Will I just jump on the long side if it does that? No. What I'll do is I'll wait for it to hit that level, and then I'll be drilling down to shorter time frame charts and looking for them to start turning positive and triggering long signals, or looking at the market structure of those shorter time frame charts and seeing them put in, a series of higher highs, higher lows, on the 5-minute, 15-minute, maybe even the 60-minute chart, recognizing that this is the key level that I'm interested in and wanting to catch the move, not when it necessarily pulls back, but back, when it starts moving back on the way up and confirming strength. So that's kind of how I'm going to be looking at this market. So let's take a look at some of the other sister indices. I'm not going to pause the video in between here. So we already looked at the daily chart from the reversion to the mean perspective. We looked at it from the weekly on the daily chart, and then we just looked at it from the weekly perspective on the Darvas squeeze perspective on the weekly chart. Hope that makes sense. Let's look at the S&P from the Darvas squeeze perspective. We don't have a valid Darvas squeeze signal firing, but we did break above the top of this Darvas box here, going back in here. So let's take a look at the NASDAQ then, the NASDAQ futures. We have the same situation where we have a probing or a breaking of that Darvas box, but we don't have a Darvas squeeze setup. So we really only have a weekly Darvas squeeze setup in the Dow futures. You can see here we don't really have a valid Darvas squeeze setup in the NASDAQ. So let's take a look at the transports, and we have, you can see here on the weekly chart, we have a squeeze with a potential breakout. It would be nice to get some kind of confirmation. I like to see a confluence not only of instruments but of the same signals in different instruments. So the transports are really coming closer to the top of the range of this Darvas box. They're in an elongated squeeze. They're holding the zero line on the MACD. And, you know, we're slightly bullish on the trending indicator. What I'd really like to see is for it to power up to these highs and break through these highs at some point and confirm, you know, from a Dow theory perspective, get a confirmation of the Dow moving higher. So that's what I would like to see. That would give me a little bit more confidence in the future direction of the Dow. Am I still bullish on the stock indices? Yes. Until the market structure or until the price action proves otherwise, I am still a net bull on the stock indices at this point in time. So that's all I have this week for the market recap. I hope it helps, and I'll look forward to seeing you at tomorrow's meetup or at a future meetup. We have meetups on the last Sunday of each month, or I will look forward to seeing you at one of the next video update recordings. So good trading, and have a fantastic rest of summer and rest of weekend. Thank you.